December stats, HIV stats are coming out. But like anyway, there's so many things that we need to discuss. And I feel that South Africa, we tend to focus more on not so pressing issues than pressing issues, and we make fun out of them. And it's time that we have serious conversation. It's time we have those uncomfortable conversations as South Africans. And currently, I'm still with my colleague and my brother, Mr. Dace, who's the editor-in-chief for Central News. And we'll be joined by Mr. Vuyo, who's the president of the ATM, the African Transformation Forum, which is a party that actually recently launched the manifesto. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we are in problem. We are in trouble as a state, and we are in trouble as a province. And there are certain things that we are totally in denial of that we don't want to talk about, and I don't know why. So these are things that we'll be actually talking about. And like I said, we are joined by Dr. Vuyo Zungula, who's the president of the African Transformation Movement. And they recently held their manifesto launch in the past Saturday at Buffalo City in preparation for the 2024 national and provincial elections. And Dr. Vuyo is going to be joining us, and we're going to pick up the conversation where we were actually talking about kids that are disappearing and the resources that the state is not utilizing in terms of tracking people down. And Dr. Vuyo, recently we had, I don't know if you saw on the news or on social media, but there's kids that have been missing in the Free State, particularly in Bloemfontein. And yesterday, one of the kids, which is a young teenager who goes to a good school, was found dead with a stab wound on her back. She was abducted from home or in her area, and a ransom was demanded by whoever abducted her. Then the next thing, her body was found about 10 kilometers away from her home, which is quite sad. And this is the part where the parents went to the police and they reported a child missing, but nothing was done. What would be your take as a political party, as ATM, in terms of how the state is handling all these crime issues, including kidnapping and kids disappearing?
The first thing that needs to happen is that there needs to be a change in attitude in terms of how we view crime. Currently, you find that South Africans are tolerant of crime. Hence, you find that others, they protect the drug dealers, they protect, criminals in their communities because of the benefit they derive from such people. And the other thing that needs to change is that we've got corrupt police officers that are ruining the image and the reputation and the standing of good standing and ethical policemen and women. So in our view, those corrupt police officers, they need to be dealt with harshly because they are given a responsibility. Now, when they are acting in a corrupt manner, they are actually betraying the trust of their office by working with criminals. And the last thing is that there needs to be change in terms of the legislation, in the sense that you need to introduce a death penalty to deal with some of the heinous crimes that we are witnessing in our country. You know, there's a country called Malawi, also in the SADC region. This country had a death penalty to deal with the killing of people living with albinism, because there was a problem of criminals targeting people living with albinism to use them for multi-purposes. Now, after Malawi introduced that legislation, there was, the killing of people with albinism went down because those criminals there, they are actually afraid of being killed themselves. So in our view, we can't have a state that is playing, sweetheart and wants to be sweet with criminals. Criminals must know that their space, they've got no space in our society, and we're not going to coexist with them. Hence, we're saying, Gukuba, some of the criminals, for some of the heinous crimes they commit, they must have death penalty. For the corrupt police officers, they must be sent to life imprisonment without the possibility of a parole. That way we clean the police service out of from those corrupt elements. And also some of the prisoners, or all of the prisoners, must work for the state for free, because currently, as we see now with the victim, that school girl, innocent child who had a bright future, now that she's killed by that criminal, you find that the parents of that school girl will be paying taxes. The taxes of the victims are now funding the lives and the livelihood of the criminals, in the sense that it is now the taxes of the victims that are going to be providing 3 meals a day, hot water, DSTV, free education for the criminals. So that is why, in our view as the ATM, a criminal, there must be harsh punishments, because currently criminality has gone out of hand in our country.
But now, in this regard, they're saying criminals also do have rights, and they are protected by the constitution of this country, of which I'm not going to say we, because it was certain people who drafted it according to how they see, according to the democratic status of this country. But now, you mentioned the part also about corrupt police that are just doing as they please. What do you think causes police to actually be in that corrupt status?
It's the endemic corruption that we see in our country. Because if you go to the centers whereby they test for driver's licenses, you find that the people that are working there, they're actually wanting to collect bribes for each and every person that wants a driving license. Go to Home Affairs, the same thing is happening. Go to virtually all of the departments, you find that because corruption is so endemic in our society, each and every person is going to use their position in order to make a personal benefit to them at the expense of the law and order and the morality of our country. That is why part of our solutions as the ATM is to really agenda the question of patriotism, so that you do have people that are going to put the interests of the country first. However, the other thing that makes corruption to be so endemic in our society is that the laws of our country are tolerant towards the wrongdoers, and they are very harsh towards the people who are abiding by the law. There are countries such as Singapore who dealt with corruption, especially in the public service, by dealing very harshly. If you're to go, example, to China, almost every week we hear about public servants who have been executed for being corrupt. But come to South Africa, you find that corruption, people who are corrupt are actually protected by the state. That is why we're calling for a change in legislation, because if you do not change the law to deal with the current problems, you can't be told about a constitution that was drafted, in the mid-90s. At the time and the issue and the climate there, it was a period of reconciliation. It was a period of compromise, because, we all know that we have a negotiated settlement, a compromise in terms of the structure of our constitution, of the economy, etc. Now, we are here 30 years later. We can't be basing our lives on that constitution that is based on compromise. We need to be basing our constitution and our legal framework based on what we want to achieve currently in terms of how we are going to deal with crime, unemployment, inequality, etc. So
also dealing with corrupt officers. What is it that you can do at least to eliminate or limit the crime stats that we have? Because some of them at times, you'll understand, Zungula, they are linked to unemployment rates. They are linked to young people who don't have jobs. They want to be seen. They also want to drive the cars that other people drive. So what else can you do as a party in terms of solving that? Because you can strengthen the legislation. At the end of the day, people are not working. People, they want to have money. People are going to festive season. They want to enjoy this festive season, but there's no money.
The last one on the dealing with the crime issue is the involvement of the communities. We've got an increase in the community policing forums across the country. These policing forums are the ones that are actually of help to the communities, because if you go to any community, you find that they know who the criminals are, and at the same time, they are the first people to be negatively affected by crime, because if a young person wants to be involved in crime and wants to steal something, they will steal right here in the community. They are unlikely to go to another city, go to another province to start a life of crime there. So that is why we are also advocating for increase in the resources, offering of training for the community so that we empower them. Now, there are other issues in terms of how to deal systematically with crime involves how we can reduce the poverty and the unemployment and the inequality levels. Because the manner in which the economy is structured, it is structured in a way that allows only a few handful individuals to participate meaningfully in the economy. And there is no mass economic participation whereby you have, people being active in the economy, whether they are in Botshabelo or they are in Giyani or in Delft. Rather, what we see is few companies actually dominating all of the industries in our country in terms of the economic participation. For example, if you look at all of the industries, it's 5 or 6 companies that are dominating almost 90%, if not more than 90% of the market share. So our solution there as the ATM, number one, is to have the government spending to go towards small businesses, because that is how you are going to create diverse players in the economy, in the sense that currently the government has got a budget that is close to 3 trillion per annum, but 80% of that 3 trillion goes to big business, and only less than 20% goes to SMMEs. So what we are saying is in ATM, number one, there needs to be change in terms of how the government spends its money. Secondly, we need to put a bar in the sense that if there's a tender or a government contract that is below 10 million rands, it must only be set aside for SMMEs. And what the reality is when it comes to SMMEs is that we've got various SMMEs. If you go to, for example, Mangaung, the SMMEs that are there are slightly different from the SMMEs that are there in the city of Cape Town. You are unlikely to find an SMME operating in Cape Town, operating in Durban, almost all of the metros or municipalities. In other words, once you focus on SMMEs, then you are going to create different players to participate in the economy. And the other one, when it comes to dealing with the unemployment issue, is to have a ban by saying that some of the basic goods, the goods that we use on a daily basis, must be produced locally in South Africa as a start. Secondly, each and every district must have factories whereby they produce these goods, so that you don't have a case whereby you've got certain regions like your Johannesburg region, your Durban and your Cape Town, whereby all of the economy, all of the jobs are centered around there. Because that is another reason why people are going to now flock to these areas, and the other municipalities or other regions in our country are going to be poorer. So that is why you are advocating that once you've got these basic goods, for example, your soap, your toothpaste, your towels, your toothpicks, once you say they must be produced here in South Africa, and each district must produce its own, in the sense that the factories that are there lying idle in Tabanchu must be the ones that are producing all of these basic goods for Mangaung. What that will mean, it will mean the economy of Mangaung will circulate amongst the people of Mangaung, and we are going to have more players in Mangaung being active in the economy. And when you go to Entlanzeni in Mpumalanga, the same thing will happen. When you go to Northwest, the KK Kaunda region, the same thing will happen. In other words, we are going to have an economy now that is defined by more active players, unlike what we see now, whereby the economy is structured in a manner that allows very few individuals. And most importantly, and last one on this issue of the economy, it is a transformation of the township economy, because our people live in the townships, and we need to make it worthwhile for them to enjoy the economy of where they live. Unlike this case now, whereby when you go to a township, you find that the people that are active economically, they are not South Africans. They are people that are coming from Asia. They are owning spaza shops or tuck shops or hardware stores there, and they're making money, whereas the indigenous people of our country are just basically economic spectators. So that is what we are saying as a party, that you need to change all of that by making sure that people are active economically where they stay and they're able to make a living, because currently the unfortunate reality now, as you stated, is that the question of unemployment, the question of being active economically is a matter of life and death. It is a matter of putting food on the table or not having anything to eat. That is why we need to structure the current economy as it is to be beneficial to the people. And now we deal with the other systematic issues as time goes on. But the first point of reference or the point of departure, get people to be active economically.
Mr. Zungula, you are speaking about the economy that is active. We are currently having a president who is perceived as a businessman. He's also a billionaire, we are told. Do you think that in his current term, because he's also taking a second term, does he allow the economy to be conducive, especially for the private sector that will create jobs for young people that you are talking about, for small businesses in our townships to be empowered? We've seen that Sibanye is retrenching over 1,000 mine workers. ArcelorMittal in Vaal, which is in Vereeniging, also in Newcastle, they're also retrenching thousands of workers. Do you think that with the current president, is he doing much to create an economy that will create more jobs?
If we're to look at the stats, Mr. Ramaphosa entered being president of the country in February 2018. Now we are 2 months away from February 2024, which is almost 6 years later. But if you look at the unemployment stats, in 2018, it was 25% or some change. Currently, we're sitting in an unemployment level that is 33%. And you've stated this 33% does not yet include the closing down of companies, mines in the Northwest and some in the in KZN, etc. The reason why that is so, it is because Mr. Ramaphosa, in his heart and his mind, he's a businessman, he's a capitalist. Therefore, his presidency is all about creating wealth for him and his funders and his close associates. Hence, you find that he really takes a position that, is going to be, unfair. He really takes a position that is pro the people. He always takes positions that are beneficial to the private sector. Hence, he even said, that he's going to, give more power, more responsibilities to the private sector, because that is all what capitalists do. So in our view as an organization is that Mr. Ramaphosa will never be able to lead a country that creates jobs, because he can't now in December 2023 commit to creating jobs, something that he's been failing to do for the past 5 years. Because at any given moment since 2018, there's never been a time whereby the unemployment rate of our country has gone down. It has always been going up, precisely because the legislation that is there, it is pro-big business. The government spending patterns, they're also pro-big business. That is why we need to change all of that. Most importantly, by putting in leadership in our country that is not embedded in the capitalist society that is killing our country. Because if you look at Mr. Ramaphosa, he's got shares, he's got interest in virtually all of the businesses. For example, if you are going to say, Mr. Ramaphosa, say, sign an executive order that says 50% of government spending must go to small businesses, he's going to cry because he's got shares in Bidvest. In other words, he won't want to actually hurt his bottom line by, taking a decision that is pro small businesses, because he's going to suffer as a shareholder of big business. And you've got people that funded his campaign, given him more than $1 billion, to be president of the ANC and later on the country. Those people want their returns. So there's no way in which he can openly and proudly advocate for policies that will make the lives of the people poorer. Sorry, make the lives of the people much better, because currently he is beholden to the people that funded his campaign.
But Mr. Vuyo, I have a question for you, directly, especially for you. Now that you mentioned issues of pushing township economy and actually transforming the economy of this country, and currently, if you mentioned something very important when you mentioned issue about foreign markets, currently South Africa is sitting at 25% of import market. No, it's 25% of exporting and 31% of importing, meaning our exporting is lower than our importing, and we're importing more than what we're exporting. And that is another factor, that because we saw recently with Woolies boycotting fruits and meat from Israel because of what is happening. But my most worry is that most political parties, they come in and they speak about how the ANC has failed, but they never get to mention how they're going to create those jobs, how are they going to create those economic opportunities for the people of this country. Because all you guys keep on saying, we will make sure that we transform the economy of the township. But the main question is how? And that's what the people want to know. How are you going to change? How are you going to make my life easier compared to what I'm currently sitting at?
Yeah. No, that one is very simple. Let's talk, for example, about the shifting of government policy to be pro small businesses. If you check, when we say currently the government is spending 80% on big business and less than 20% on SMMEs, the how part is to say, change how the government is spending its money. They must spend its money on SMMEs. SMMEs, you're going to have various SMMEs operating the country. And if you check the SMMEs, it's actually mostly young people that are, that are practicing, that are wanting to have government contracts. So that is the first part when it comes to how. The second part, it is the question of the basic goods, because you find that we've got things that we are using as a country on a daily basis. Everywhere you go, every day there's bread that is being bought by our people. Everywhere you go, people are buying the soap, are buying the candles, are buying all of the goods that are used on a daily basis. But the question is, who is producing those goods? And what is the role of our people when it comes to now the production? You find that people do not have any role that they are playing in terms of the production. So that is why you are saying, in order for us not to have an economy that is in selected few hands, our model means every district, meaning if you go to Mangaung, for example, there's the factories that are there in Thabanchu. Everyone knows about those factories, and they're not being utilized. Now, if you're going to say all of these basic goods must be produced here in Thabanchu, what's going to happen is that, number one, you are going to be creating employment for the people in Mangaung, in Thabanchu, in Bosabelo, for them to work on those factories. And we are going to have increase in terms of the logistics companies that are going to transport those goods from the factories to the respective retailers. You are going to be assisting by creating jobs to the accountants, the business students, the logistics students, who now need to take part in this ecosystem that is there. And also what we're saying again as a means of practically making people active in the economy is to say, if you go to the private sector, let's say your child goes to a private school, your child is told there, or you as a parent, you are told, if you want to buy uniform for my child, you need to buy it in a certain company. You don't just wake up and buy a white shirt, at Ackermans or Mr. Price or anywhere. You are told this is where you need to buy it. So what we are saying now as a party, in conclusion, what we are saying as a party, you need again to have a legislation that is saying in this particular area, for you to be able to create jobs, you need to have a legislation, a team. All of these goods, for example, uniform, must be sourced from the cooperatives of how jobs will be created and how people will be made economically active.
But do you think, especially among group, which is Black people, do you think there is understanding when it comes to entrepreneurship due to the fact that people are being told okay, you're unemployed, start your own business, they go and register a business, they get into this whole system of database, tax clearances, all that. But we are seeing there is a lack of understanding when it comes to trade due to the fact that majority go to government hoping that I can register a business and I'm going to get a government contract sharp. Then they get the government contract, they get the money. Most of the money goes from hand to mouth. It finishes. And then the next thing, SARS comes chasing after them and they say it's corruption and all that. How you as a party, when there's so much lack of understanding when it comes to entrepreneurship, how are you going to bridge that gap?
Look, our people do have understanding of business. Let me tell you what is killing our SMMEs. Number one, there is lack to access to market for our SMMEs. You find that rightfully, as you say, the businesses has been created, the business plan is there, the funding is there from the NYDA and CEDA and CIFA, but you find that our people do not have access to markets. So what the government needs to do is to assist in terms of providing markets or access to markets so that you do not have these ideas actually dying down because no one is procuring. That is one. The second thing that is killing SMMEs, it is a question of invoices that are paid after 90 or 120 days. Now, you find that if you do work now for example, 50,000, you need to wait for about 120 days for that invoice to be paid. And for it to be paid, you need to pay inchonjo. So that is another reason why our businesses for our young people, SMEs, are failing because of the system that is there, the culture that is there. Because a big company such as Big Vest can actually cope without being paid for 6 months, but an SMME cannot cope. So that is what needs to change. Now, on the question of access to markets, that is why you are saying that once you make it compulsory that every government department, whether it's municipalities and SOE or department, anything that has got to do with government, 50% of their spending must go to SMMEs and their invoices must be paid within 30 days and there must be no amanchoncho or inchoncho being paid in order for those invoices to be paid. Then we are going to see big our businesses, our SMMEs thriving because the conditions are there. Currently, our SMMEs are struggling because of the nature and the culture and the difficulties that they are facing when it comes to doing business.
Mr. Tace?
All right. Mr. Zungula, in some of the things that you have mentioned, a lot of time you are talking about crime. You are also talking about issues of bribery, which has to deal with corruption. There are other opposition parties in the country. I'll make an example that are known for certain things. For example, EFF, we know that they are known for nationalization. They are known for speaking about land. They are known for speaking for the majority of Black people. What is it that your party is known for, especially now that we know that it is a faith-based political party, which is backed by religious people? What are some of the things that will make you to stand out going into this election to say, let me vote for ATM? Why? Why should I vote for it? What is it that is different about it as a political party?
The ATM is a party that prides itself that we offer servant leadership, because leadership could be there, but if the leadership and the outlook of that leadership, it is not to serve the people, then you are not going to win anything. And also, we pride ourselves as a party that prioritizes South Africans in terms of the economy, in terms of the job opportunities, because in our view, you find that to a certain extent, economic opportunities are there in our country, but the beneficiaries of the economic opportunities are not South African. Hence, I mentioned the issue of the township economy, whereby you are least likely to find a South African operating in that sector of the economy. And you ask yourself a question, Ukuba, if South Africans cannot partake in the most basic economic activities in our country, where are they most likely going to participate in? Also, when it comes to the job issue, you find that jobs are there. Go to many restaurants, go to many farms, go to some establishments. You find that the people that are actually working there, they are not South African. And you find that the millions of unemployed South Africans have got no space to operate. I'll recall that in the, I think it was 2020, there was a job advert in KFC for cleaners. I think it was 3 cleaners. More than 2,000 people showed up wanting to submit CVs there, which shows that, people are hungry for jobs. Now, if you're to look at some of the establishments, you find that people are working, but the people, are they South African? The answer is no, which makes it, which makes the structure of the economy to be unfair, especially towards native South Africans. So we're very unapologetic to say South Africans must come first when it comes to the issue of economic participation at all levels, whether it is the most basic part of the economy or the strategic sectors of the economy. So for us, that is another one. And then there's a question of accountability, as you've seen in Parliament, because our role in Parliament as a party was not to just add numbers or go with the wind. Our role was to defend the interests of the people of our country. You'll recall that in 2019, the question of the informal sector, the township economy, the microeconomy, and putting South Africa first never found any expression in terms of the discourse in Parliament. But through ATM, people and parties now are speaking about the prioritization of South Africans in the economy. We also drove the question of making sure that when it comes to the issue of the vaccines, that you do not have the government that are experimenting on the people using those vaccines. We also dealt with the Pala issue. We've also dealt with the question or the issue of the plane that landed in Bisho without following the proper protocols. Currently, we are pushing this question of the RAN manipulation. So what you will know ATM to be about is to say, have all of these institutions operate in line with their mandate, because had you had a country whereby, for example, the border management authorities work according to their mandate, you would not have people that are complaining about high number of undocumented immigrants in our country. Had you had the Department of Labor actually having inspectors going around making sure that all companies are not violating our labor immigration laws, we would not have people that are working in South Africa without the scarce or critical skills visas. If you had, the Department of Health doing their part, you would not have people that are complaining about the fake, expired or rejected goods that are sold to our people. So that is why, in our view, critically, make sure when it comes to the accountability, we've tried to push that the respective departments are able to do what they are constitutionally required to do.
Mr. Vuyo, we have come to that time where I have to let you go. But you said a handful in terms of that. I wanted to touch more on the 12 million unregistered young people for voting, but it will be another topic for another day. But like I say, in closing, just in 30 seconds, what do you have to say to a South African citizen sitting out there and they are actually weighing their options in terms of what must happen next year?
Firstly, the kind of country our children will inherit depends on the type of decisions we take now. Once we take decisions having in mind that we are doing it not only for ourselves, but for our children and their children so that they get to inherit a better country. So it falls upon us, or the responsibility falls upon us to work towards and to achieve that. Now, as a party, as we've shown that we are not scared of anything and anyone, that is why we are able to raise the uncomfortable truths, especially when it comes to the abuse of power and the question of dealing with the basics of the economy. And if you're to look as a party, we've pushed so hard to make sure that South Africans are prioritized, because we are not in the pocket of all of these companies that are funding political parties. So when a person needs to decide who to vote for, they need to ask themselves, who is funding this person? Because whoever funds political parties is the one that is controlling political parties. Manifestos are meaningless to a certain degree, because what gets to be implemented by the parties, it is the will of the funders. Hence, we saw, for example, the ruling party has got a manifesto, a policy that talks about the question of the state bank. But if you're to ask yourself, and that is a resolution of 2017, but there's still no reserve state bank as we speak now, because it is the funders that actually dictate what must happen. So as a party, we're funded by the people, fully accountable to the people, and we owe our allegiance to the people. So when you vote for ATM, it's a vote for your own voice, because we represent no other voice but the people's voice.
Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, that was Vuyo Zungula, the president of the African Transformation Movement. And like you heard his side of the story. Don't forget, South Africans, we all have an option. It's your choice at the end of the day. And let's not forget that as much as we can say the president is not doing this, the president is doing that, or the MEC or the premier is not doing this, don't forget that the power is in your hands. It's you who chooses who you want to see in terms of the running orders of this country. So come next year, if you didn't register, I would advise you to go and check out the IEC on their website. I know you can register online. There's still that option. Do that, because at the end of the day, the power is in your hand. Whether you choose the ATM or any other political parties, it's all up to you. But you've heard what Tebogo said and what he's promising as his party for what they can do for you. So, like I said, the power holds in between. So I'm going to take a break. And when we come back, Mr. Dace will be talking to the newly appointed city manager for Mangaung Metro Municipality. And he's going to be breaking it down in terms of, he's got a new cabinet, if I may call it that, new managers that we'll be talking about. So when we come back, we will be talking to Mtate Selomora, who's the city manager for Mangaung. And also he's going to be telling us why we don't have vote. I don't know. But without wasting time, let me take that break. We'll be back. Don't go. It's going to be interesting. The people of Mangaung, we're talking about serious issues also. So don't go. Come back. And we are out.